Everyone, my name is Tamino Imperial. I'm a T-Rex VTuber. If anyone doesn't know me, you're here. Hope you're all doing well, and welcome to my Dino Fact on Carcharodontosaurus. Carcharodontosaurus is a Carcharodontosaurid genus from early Cretaceous North Africa. Name means sharp-toothed lizard, being derived from the shark genus Carcharodon. Might be familiar with as its only living member today, none other than the great white shark. On first glance, there may not really be all that much in common with their teeth besides just and belonging to a carnivorous animal. But if you look closely at the sides of the teeth, you'll find small sharp edges called serrations, would have helped the teeth in being able to better slice through flesh, like certain knives that you probably have in your kitchen right now. Just like those knives, although I wouldn't recommend doing this, teeth have been very helpful at causing a lot of blood loss in whatever prey these animals would have bitten, allowing them to back up and let their prey slowly be weakened by blood loss, lowering the odds of serious injury or possibly even death. Probably this that allowed Carcharodontosaurus and its closest relatives be able to hunt the largest land animals ever walk the earth. Mighty sauropods. Thank you so very much for watching this portion of the video because there is still a bit more to go. So does anyone else feel like Carcharodontosaurus doesn't really get much love in media? I feel like I'm not the only one that notices that. I mean, sure, it's not a household name like T-Rex or Velociraptor, definitely far from that. But I feel like it should be like Carnotaurus or Allosaurus, where anyone that's had a dinosaur phase should have at least heard of it once. But in spite of that, there are no movies featuring Carcharodontosaurus you could find. None at all. Nothing in the Jurassic franchise, no Land Before Time, none of that. Not in dinosaur documentaries, we have monsters, the Let's stop talking about Monsters Resurrected. I don't know why I decided to do this. Next up we got Dinosaur Planet, Planet Dinosaur. Kinda funny how that worked out, huh? Anyways, let's start things off with probably the most iconic documentary Carcharodontosaurus, Planet Dinosaur. With this pretty nice color scheme of red with black stripes. The accurate design for the time, maybe a slightly shrink-wrapped head, but that's about it. Unfortunately, it kind of falls into the big theropod trope of us being there to kill, roar, and eat things, and not really much else. I'm not a prude. I do enjoy seeing dinosaur fights, but I feel like there should be more to that, especially in a dinosaur documentary. So we don't just see these creatures being treated as just voracious monsters and not animals trying to survive in their environments. I feel like a good mix of both always works. Because when you see an animal indulge in just casual behaviors, you get to bond with it as an individual, and you actually feel reason to root for it in a fight. Fight means something to a creature, not just fighting mindlessly like a character being controlled by a player in a fighting game. An example of this is in the Carcharodontosaurus' neighbor, Spinosaurus. There's one individual that we follow through a little bit of Planet Dinosaur, see how he responds to a drought in his environment, dig around to search for more water. That doesn't work. Tries his luck of crocodilomorphs. Decides to get a little closer to their pond and, one is aggressive at him, doesn't go out of his way to kill it just because. When a much larger Sarcosuchus shows up, Spinosaurus makes a smart decision and chooses to fight just for the sake of it and moves to find new territory instead. Some nice realistic animal behavior that just really get to know the Spino, but if not having a name or anything like that. Thus, we root for the Spinosaurus when he tries to get a meal or Carcharodontosaurus, since we know he's hungry, we know he's an animal that is struggling to survive and he needs this. So then we root for him when he wins and takes the carcass from the Carcharodontosaurus. Subsequently, we mourn and feel bad for the Spinosaurus when we see it struggle to move as a result of its injuries and still being hungry. We watch as it lies down, heavily panting, and finally takes his last breaths. Just a little bit of screen time with perfectly normal animal behavior. We see the Spinosaurus as a sympathetic individual. Compared to all of this, the Carcharodontosaurus, meanwhile, is kinda just a footnote. Antagonistic force that the Spinosaurus needed to overcome, get food. You don't get any reason to see it as also a sympathetic creature that trying to survive in its environment as well. I just want to let everyone know that I do not hate Carcharodontosaurus from Dinosaur Planet. As a stellar design, I just wish that this behavior could have been a little bit better. In Dinosaur to Dinosaur Planet, we have not quite Carcharodontosaurus, because it turns out that the theropods that these fellas were based off were actually a Rosteon, a Megaraptorian, so it poses a little bit of a problem. However, I think similar to Gorgon for Walking with Dinosaurs 3D, I'll call them by their intended name, but I'll acknowledge that they are in fact outdated. I will say I absolutely love that there is a variation between the individuals themselves, mirrored the color scheme of the sexually dimorphic Akasauruses, so presumably these two are also male and female? Besides that, we don't really know much else about these two. They only really show up in two scenes. One is to steal a kill, and the other is to make a kill. I feel like there was room for some kind of unique behavior on display, like maybe we could have had a scene where they sleep next to the carcass, sure it's not stolen by scavengers like lions do. Maybe they could have displayed parental behavior like the Akasauruses do. I do want to note that Dinosaur Planet is pretty famous for having main character dinosaurs, and the Carcharodontosauruses were not one of them, but other episodes have shown that they can give other dinosaurs that aren't the main ones some interesting scenes and behaviors, in spite of their more limited screen time. So I kind of feel like the Carcharodontosaurus should have been able to get some of that. Overall, the Dinosaur Planet Carcharodontosaurus doesn't look really dang good for the time, but does fall into the usual theropod must-be monster. Moving on to Walking with Dinosaurs 2025. We have the new Carcharodontosaurus Sobex episode, and it's probably the most accurate looking Carcharodontosaurus today, but does fall into the trope yet again of just doing a whole lot of roaring, killing, and eating, which is a real shame because the original Walking with Dinosaurs was really good at showcasing the variety of behaviors that dinosaurs could have had, and I was waiting for the new one to also do that. Now we are moving on to my favorites from my childhood, Dinosaur King's Carcharodontosaurus. One of the best green dinosaur designs I think I've ever seen. As an added bonus, it's pretty darn accurate for this time overall, just minus the posture of its arms. It's got an awesome signature move card in the form of Fire Cannon, where it shoots a giant explosive fireball out of its mouth. And it has an awesome fight with Terry the T-Rex and Ace the Carnotaurus. Overall, Dinosaur King Carcharodontosaurus has got the coolness factor spades. And it does not let up in Season 2 when Gabbro was his own Carcharodontosaurus. We get to see it decked out in spectral armor. It fights Tank. The complaint I really gotta say about Carcharodontosaurus and Dinosaur King is their individuality again. I can't really say too much about the Space Pirates Carcharodontosaurus since their dinos basically never have personality, since I'm pretty sure they're supposed to be under a type of mind control. The wild dinosaurs from Season 1, a lot of them really had some interesting personalities that I really enjoyed, but which helped to explain why they had violent tendencies. I feel like that could have worked for the Carcharodontosaurus. Not to mention that one of the best stories is from its very close relative, Acrocanthosaurus. Probably one of the most tragic stories in the entire series, starting as a lost and confused father trying to get back to his family after waking up in the present-day world, lost and confused about where he is. When he finally finds his family again, they're dead. Just all alone now. Eight and childs. And then he's burnt alive by Terry before he's captured by the Alpha Gang. He's then experimented on by Dr. Z, turning into the Alpha Acrocanthosaurus, where he's introduced to a weapon monster that's lost all of who he once was. The identity, his memory of his family, will, it's all gone. He's just now a monster that only knows how to destroy and burn everything down to the ground around him. Only saving grace is being taken down by Ace using Cyclone. Finally turns him back into a card again. Now he can finally rest peacefully. A dang good story, and I really wish that the Carcharodontosaurus wished to get something like this, at least a distinct personality to call his own. The idea I had is that he could have been one of the very first dinosaurs that got turned into a card by the ancients, and subsequently one of the first to be forced to fight by Dr. Z, would give it something of a disdain towards humans, so when it wakes up in the present-day world, it would lash out at them, blowing up any human infrastructure it could find, kinda going through Godzilla -1 kinda arc. At least that's just my own idea. I should probably make this known that I am aware that this is a franchise built around using cards to make dinosaurs fight. But in every story in every Dinosaur King game, they always portray the dinosaurs as being sympathetic creatures, not ones that particularly enjoy fighting, but they do it to protect each other. They're always lending the D team their power so that they can save from the Alpha Gang, especially the original arcade game, where the only dinosaurs you fight are ones that have already been taken over by the Alpha Gang.
We've come to save the dinosaurs from the evil Alpha Gang!
It only makes sense to want to depict these creatures as being sympathetic individuals. I really wish that the Carcharodontosaurus got to be part of that, but kinda falls up short. Overall, it's still really dang cool, and I still love it with all of my heart, but I just wish there was more to talk about. Probably a very surprising one, but it's Chef Carson Dinosaur Train. He's very stylized, but I've grown used to his design. Especially like the little fake beard he's got. That works, but as an educational character, he does his job well. Portrays a lot of the basic stuff about Carcharodontosaurus, being a large theropod, related to Giganotosaurus. Got his razor-sharp blade-like teeth that gives it his name. The kid show character, he does a great job at being entertaining. I know I definitely enjoyed him when I watched this episode as a kid. Definitely got the energy of a celebrity chef. Playing Kazam a lot when he puts salt on his food, which I'm pretty sure is something that young children will definitely enjoy. He's a pretty nice guy since he gives food out to all of his audience members, and Buddy and Tiny volunteered to help him out in the kitchen. While they were cooking, he made something for them behind the scenes so that they could enjoy themselves after they were done, which is pretty nice. And also he made something for the Pteranodon specifically since they eat fish instead of meat. Well, I think he's a great introduction for kids to learn about Carcharodontosaurus. Honestly, the only big shame about him is that he's a one-off character. Like a few other characters in Dinosaur King who get to show up multiple times so that audience members can get to learn more and more about their individual species of dinosaur across multiple episodes. I think there's definitely potential for what they could have done more with Carson. Especially with Laura since they call each other cousins. There are a couple episodes that don't focus on just one specific dinosaur, like the Theropod Club, Pterosaur Flying Club. I think like a Carcharodontosaur to get together or family reunion would have been pretty cool. Introduce some new Carcharodontosaur characters, Concavinator maybe? And then we get to have audience members learn about why this family of dinosaurs is so interesting and cool. But overall, I think for an educational character in a kids show, I think Carson does an excellent job as a Carcharodontosaurus. So, Carcharodontosaurus overall doesn't have the best track record. Yeah. Its appearances are rather far and few in between, and a good amount of those appearances just portray it killing and eating and not much else.
Children, animals, old people, doesn't matter. I just love killing.
Some of them feel like they're only here because of their famous rich neighbor, Spinosaurus. Thankfully, there are two Carcharodontosaurus individuals in media who do not succumb to these issues and are treated as their own individuals, well respected, their own personalities, and important roles in their respective media, appearances, and they do their job well. Hold it! Wait a minute, you say two? Another one that you haven't mentioned yet. Yes, there is. Not only is she probably the closest thing to a Carcharodontosaurus main character media, but she's one that I don't think anyone has heard of. Who here remembers Seton Academy? This one show that you may know for having one of the worst kinds of sexual dimorphism that you can come up with in fiction. Or maybe you more fondly remember it for having a fully grown Tyrannosaurus Rex as a teacher. That's what I remember it for. Teacher Tyranno. Hey, we got the same name, but his is just more creative. But yeah, him, and the fact that Seton Academy tries to incorporate real-world biology into its story, even if it gets it wrong sometimes very wrong. It still resonated with me enough so that I got into the anime, and then later I picked up the manga. It's pretty mediocre overall, but I still had fun with it, especially whenever there was stuff involving dinosaurs like Tyranno. Especially in his own special 6-chapter long mini-arc where we see life as a student at Mesozoic Academy. Very clever name. And we also meet a certain other student that is going to be very, very important for this video going forward. Everybody, say hello to Samino Tasako, young Carcharodontosaurus, with Samino being Japanese for shark, and Tosa being from the middle part of Carcharodontosaurus, not the species name, unlike what the translator note said, unless Saharia somehow has a TO somewhere. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Yeah, she is a little different from your average Carcharodontosaurus depiction, but gotta remember, this is Seton Academy. She's gotta fit in with the art style so she doesn't feel out of place, like she's an OC or something. But still, I wish they could have given her a little something to really scream out Carcharodontosaurus in her design. Maybe something shark-themed, maybe like her clothes, or I don't know. But, I mean, this is far from the worst animal-to-human design I've seen, so I'll go with it. Tyranno seems to also really like this design since Tasako is Tyranno's main love interest for the story. Upon hearing that she has that kind of role, and knowing that this is a manga/anime series, you might be a little bit worried if she's ended up in suggestive content, and yep, gotta be honest with you, yep, there is that. So if it makes you uncomfortable, that's incredibly valid. You do not need to engage with Seton Academy anymore, but long-term anime and anime-adjacent media fan, just kinda numb to it, and I try not to let it get in the way of how I view characters involved in that kind of content, because there are a lot of really good ones who just also have fan service as part of their repertoire. And in the case of Samino Tasako, it's relatively tame by comparison to what I've seen, at least. Most of it is in the head of, lovesick, hormonal 16-year-olds, who is generally respectful to her when they interact, never does anything to make her uncomfortable, and the other half is just Tasako, things that sound weird out of context. On the subject of explicit content, though, there is one scene that you should definitely avoid. It definitely does not fall under fan service because manga itself portrays it as bad. Mikio, the school bully, a Seance, trying to do something very bad, so just skip straight to chapter 112, where Tyranno finishes his puberty and he gives Mikio his righteous comeuppance. And yeah. If I have not scared you away yet with all the messed up stuff that is in Seton Academy, let's focus on the good then, and start the character analysis on Samino Tasako. He's the deuteragonist of this arc, and alongside Tyranno is one of the very last dinosaurs to be alive right around the time of the KT extinction events, which, if you remember from what I showed earlier, means that either Hisako is very late to her own extinction, or maybe she somehow tanked it. First talking scene leaves quite the impression, as she is the only student that Maikyo, the resident school bully, is afraid of, and after saving Terano, she both tells him that he's kinda dumb for trying to fight someone like Maikyo, but is also supportive, telling him that she thinks he looked cool. I think it's interesting characterization, showing she's not just his cheerleader, but also not overly harsh to him, I think. Later on, we learn that she has a very interesting dream about wanting to become a teacher. Unique to her in regards to Seton Academy, so it makes her stand out, and it has importance to her story going forward and also Terano's. She tells him about this dream not too long after he hears about the mass extinction event that's about to happen, so it's a little awkward. He proceeds to go on something of a pessimistic tangent about how nothing they really do in the next coming days is really gonna matter, since a big space meteor is gonna come make it all worth nothing. Honestly, I think it's kinda cool. As someone who played Persona 3 a few months ago, I just find the idea interesting of one person at the end of the world just going absolutely ballistic and trying to see how other characters try to help them with that, because I think it's an understandable reaction. When you find out that everyone and everything you know is going to be gone soon, you're not going to be your best self, or someone else is not going to be their best self, definitely, and I think it's interesting to see how other people would try to handle that situation and hopefully uplift the people that are more in despair and help them also find some new hope in that situation. For Hisako, she, at least at this point, just silently agrees with Terano and walks off, but as she does so, she makes one last statement supporting Terano's own dream before she walks off, and Terano's friends understandably berate him for what he just said. But we see how, perhaps, Hisako's words sparked a bit of new life into him. A spark that is nearly snuffed out the next day when Terano and Hisako are assigned for gym class the very next day, and it seems like perhaps she was not quite as chill with what Terano said as she pretended yesterday. I think it provides some interesting insight to her as a character, and also, I think it's a reasonable reaction, even though I know why Terano was saying what he said before. You still need to live with the consequences of what you said, regardless of how you were feeling in the moment. Especially if said words were among the lines of, "I think your lifelong passion and dream is worth nothing." Terano catches on to this and tries to have a conversation with her about how she's feeling. Hisako tries to brush it off and pretend that she doesn't really care about what he said, but as Terano makes a heartfelt apology to her, see her face away from the screen, which I interpret as her actually being affected by Terano's words, but isn't quite ready to show her emotions just yet. Hisako accepts his apology, but in exchange she asks for one thing of him, and that's to be her very first student. That was definitely the first thing he was thinking of. Anyways, during their little tutoring session, Terano asks Hisako why she's so nonchalant about the extinction event, and her only response is just, it's no use worrying about it. But later it seems like there's a little more than she lets on, as right after they're done, they see the meteor right outside the window. Hisako finally opens up a bit as we see her lament about how Terano is going to be her first and very last student, as her hand shakes while she's clutching onto her notebook. And I want to note that I'm not a psychologist, but at least from what I interpret, maybe what she's showing here might be a sign of a simulation or smiling depression, both of which are characterized by hiding your true emotions behind a facade, and lots of times it's hiding more negative emotions behind a more cheerful demeanor, but that's all it does. Conceal, it does not remove anything. In Hisako's case, she tries to act nonchalant when Terano talks to her about the extinction event. Even though she doesn't like to show it, it's still pretty clear that the looming dread of the extinction event and how it's going to snuff away her and her dream is weighing deeply on her. Thankfully, Toronto catches on, and he holds her hand and tells her that he wants her to teach her tomorrow, supporting her dream, and the chapter ends there. And I absolutely love this. It provides narrative purpose to her dream of wanting to become a teacher, since it's the main reason these two are able to spend time together, develop their bond, and most importantly, we get to see what they gain directly from spending time with each other, and it's not just out of plot obligation. We actually get to see Tasako benefit from having Toronto as someone to be honest about her emotions with, someone who is willing to help her achieve her dream in the last few days they have left. And for Toronto, Tasako helps him as someone who's given him new life and has helped him to try to be optimistic. And the literal end of the world is about to befall them, and when he finds out that she herself was not quite as optimistic as he initially thought, he decides to reciprocate the deed that she did for him, and he tries to be the one to help pick her up and get her back on her feet, and continue to try to live her life as best as she can. It's not the greatest written bond between two characters out there, but at least for me, I think it's pretty sweet and wholesome overall. Granted, there is the fact that Toronto is still pretty down bad for Tasako, but I think that's just a healthy part of any relationship, as long as it doesn't overweigh the emotional connection between the two people. And we do see later that probably Tasako feels the same way. Overhears Toronto and his friends talking about his crush, and her only response is that she just wants to hear it directly from Toronto. Then turns over to him, waiting very expectantly, and then he chickens out. Although to be fair, he was put on the spot, so I don't really blame the man. Here's why I like Tasako as a character. Her dream has both important narrative value and value to the characters personally. Relationship with Toronto is pretty well written as far as I can tell. As far as I can tell, it's pretty healthy, and for Tasako herself as a character, she's generally kind, but isn't above, like teasing or being harsh when she needs to be. She has a dream that makes her not just there to be a supportive side character. She has a real horse in this race. And she also has some real human flaws, like trying to help others when she's struggling to take care of herself, and trying to be as optimistic as she can be while not being immune to despair. Oh, also, she could probably solo most Carcharodontosaurus in fiction. I did say most. Remember Mikio, the Saiyats, the school bully from earlier? Remember how Tasako was the only student that he was afraid of? He attacked her later because the literal threat of extinction made fighting her part of his bucket list. Let's start with the fact that this is not a Saiyats. Instead of living alongside early Tyrannosaurids, he's bullying actual young T-Rexes. He's nearly the size of a fully grown T-Rex, which is insane. And he also has these over-the-top lacrimal crests and some crocodile-like scutes along his head and body. This is not a Saiyats, this is the unholy offspring of One Eye from Speckles the Tarbosaurus and the Camp Cretaceous Tarbosaurus. And this thing got kicked by Tasako, knocking him right off his feet when he tried to kill Toronto as another part of his bucket list, and she gets into a fighting stance, no fear at all. And later when she gets slammed into a concrete wall by Mikio, there's no sign of physical injury on her anywhere. They also get into this, looks like a clash between them, Dragon Ball style, I'm not sure. Maybe she's just blocking attacks, but either way, to me she seems fine. She only falters when Toronto tries to help, but it doesn't go well. He gets tail swiped into a wall for all his troubles, and Tasako gets distracted, and she technically loses. But Toronto makes up for his mistake. Yo, his justice hurts. Right as the meteor is here, about to cause Armageddon. I remember that confession from earlier. So right before they're about to die, Tasako asks for Toronto to do it again, but in the end, Toronto chooses not to do it, because confessing now would be like giving up, and she taught him not to give up, even when things looked dire. So instead, he uses his newfound courage, alongside his friends and Mikio for some reason, to roar away the meteor. And he goes about as well as you'd expect. Tasako probably should have taught him some geology so he'd know that rocks do not have fear responses. So anyways, the plan fails and almost starts panicking. Tasako desperately tries to get Terano to confess while they still have some seconds left, but we then cuts to Darwin Academy, school for extinct species. Do not ask how that works because they will never explain it. But anyways, a certain teacher there may seem a little familiar. Tasako is alive and well, and it seems off-screen during the millions of years that have passed. She succeeded in her dream of becoming a teacher. Wish we could have gotten like a bonus chapter or something to see how she got here, but it's still nice to see one of her main plot lines be resolved. As for the other one, still clear that she harbors feelings for Terano, although some of them may not be that good, because apparently for millions of years, she has been holding a grudge against him for not confessing when he had the chance. Or Tasako. But yeah, from this arc forward, she's now a side character alongside Terano, but I like that she's part of the main story now. Including in this one arc revolving a lot of time travel shenanigans, don't worry about it, but basically Darwin Academy students come to help the main characters. Terano notices and wants to contact their teachers, but it appears to be unnecessary as Joe shows up to reprimand her students for messing around in another school, and the two star-crossed dino lovers reunite. And it's a pretty sweet moment. I want to take note of the fact that this is most likely only possible thanks to Tasako's dream of wanting to become a teacher. As obviously it was her dream first, and I like to believe that the time they spent together is what inspired Terano to become a teacher in the present day. And now it's all come together, and her story has narrative value once again, as we get this sweet reunion between the two. And now Terano finally has a chance to tell Tasako something very important, something he's been meaning to tell her for quite some time, as Tasako looks expectantly, wagging her tail. He's sorry that he tried to roar a rock away.
Say goodbye, goodbye, goodbye.
Tasako then takes her leave, and I am not really a big fan of this, but even though I don't like ignorant main characters, this is at least better than Terano being toxic or something. He's just fumbling confessions or can't get a hint. Sadly, that will be it for Tasako in the main story, as this is her last appearance before Seton Academy ends. But then she comes back for an epilogue chapter where Darwin Academy gets some transfer students. Surprisingly late in the year, he goes to see that her new students are Feral, a giant wolf girl and sister to one of the main leads, and her pack. One of her pack mates for some reason decides to start a fight. It goes about as well as you would expect.
Goodbye, goodbye.
Feral then starts muttering something about Terano, and when Tasako tries to get Feral to explain herself, she reveals that around the time that Tasako last appeared, Terano confided in Feral that Tasako was his first love. She directly said before that she wanted to hear it directly from him, but I guess she's just taking what she can get. Or maybe she just needed to lower standards, or the author forgot. I don't know. One of them. Unfortunately, we don't get to see what Tasako does with this information, as Feral reveals she was only here to fight Tasako for Terano's love. By the way, she was a student at Seton Academy where Terano teaches. the last big fight in Zeton Academy is happening because of this. So yeah. So it's a pretty damn cool fight that nearly tears apart Darwin Academy. And this is where Zeton Academy finally truly ends. Interestingly enough, with Tasako as one of the main focuses. Okay, there is a second epilogue chapter, but it has no dinosaurs, so I don't care. Yeah. I just think it's interesting that it more or less ended with Tasako as one of the main focuses. Like the closest thing Carcharodontosaurus will ever get. Something like the T-Rex ending for Jurassic World. And I think that's pretty cool. So good on Zeton Academy for that. And that is why I still believe that Samino Tasako is the closest thing we got to a Carcharodontosaurus main character, and probably one of the best Carcharodontosauruses we have in fiction, technically. I do think it's important to reiterate that Tasako is not directly comparable to most depictions of Carcharodontosaurus, definitely not, but relative to her media, I think Tasako got it really good. She got to be a deuteragonist for her own arc, then gets to be brought back into the main story as a recurring side character, and gets to be part of one of the story's last chapters. It's really dang good for an anime/manga side character. Really the kind of love and focus Tasako got. The documentary, I feel like we would need Carcharodontosaurus to get multiple segments dedicated to it, like the T-Rexes and prehistoric planets, or maybe get a role as a secondary main character, a story-driven documentary like the Akasaurus's Dinosaur Planets, but so far we don't have that, sadly. And it's a shame, because Carcharodontosaurus is a really damn cool dino, and I hope it gets a lot more love and affection in the next coming years. And I have very high hopes that that's probably going to be the case. Especially with a lot of pretty good paleo media coming out in recent years, like Prehistoric Planets, and the Jurassic films are still pretty good, I think. I like them a lot. I have hope that Carcharodontosaurus will get a chance to shine in spotlights. At least for now, Asako Samino from Zeton Academy is considered, by me at least, to be one of the best Carcharodontosauruses we have right now in fiction. And that was my pitch for why we need more dinosaurs in anime, folks. For the first part of this project that I would like to recommend, let's bring back Dinosaur King for Season 3. And then after that, let's bring back Fossil Fighters with an anime. So thankfully and hopefully, that one game will not be its legacy. And then we can have a milestone for paleo art and paleo media by having a Dinosaur Sanctuary anime as the first anime to prominently feature scientifically accurate dinosaurs. So, what does everybody think? Thank you to everyone who watched this video. I am so sorry that it took so freaking long to get it out. I promise I will try to get these out much more frequently. I'm going to try my best for the rest of this summer break to actually start getting these Dino Fact vids out. But I would like to know what you all think of these long-formed Dino vids. Do you think I should keep doing them? Should I keep them short form? Let me know. And I shall see you all next time. And bye-bye for now.